What, if anything, could have prevented you from getting involved in gangs?
It's the charity that I set up 10 years ago. I felt when I came out of prison and I experienced prison and went through that journey, I felt if I had an ex-offender who's walked the walk and been in that position to come to my secondary school to tell me what is that criminal justice system is really like, I felt that would be enough to deter me. So that made me want to set up a charity to offer exactly that. So that's what would have deterred me.
Okay, just a sort of quick follow-up from me. It seems to be sort of two key milestones in your early life: when you were 10, when you were initially groomed, and then say 16 when you were becoming more involved. What would you say to 10-year-old you, and what would you say to 16-year-old you? And do you think it would have made a difference, bearing in mind you were then involved and part of what was going on?
Yeah, no, very good question. What I would say to a 10-year-old Francis back then is dream, have aspirations, have a dream, have aspirations, and focus, and know what I want to be. I had lack of identity, I speak to 10-year-olds now and I ask them, what's your dream job? They're able to tell me exactly what they want to do when they grow up. I wasn't challenging myself at that age, asking myself those questions. And growing up on that council estate was very tough, And what I say to myself as 16-year-old me is, oh my gosh, education, education, education. Because at the end of all my troubles, I found my way in life and I found this success because education set me free. I left school with 6 or 7 GCSEs. And then at the end of all my troubles, I went back to university and studied. And that's when I started seeing doors open for me, opportunities open for me. The life of crime put me in jail for 9 years. As soon as I turned back to education, my life transformed. And that has been the difference I see myself with me and my associates. They didn't have the education that I had. So that would be my answer, Alan.
Just sort of, again, a follow on, and to all of our sort of attendees, please put any questions in now if you and we can come to them. But something from the session earlier that Simon talked about, the sort of convergence of sort of gangs, IT and social media and drugs markets. What I'm quite interested in is that you 20 years ago, and the two of those things would have been present. So gangs were present on your estate, and obviously very much around the control of the drugs markets in and around London. What wasn't present was widespread use of social media.
Smartphones.
Smartphones. To what extent has smartphones and social media changed the rules of the game out there? And how and why is it different for a young person today than it was 20 years ago?
Okay, so 20 years ago, you were more it's a greater risk. You're more out there on the streets. You're doing greater traveling. You're meeting drug addicts to go and sell them drugs. You're taking a lot more risk. I remember 22 years ago, as a drug dealer myself, those who were on benefits, who were users, we used to take their benefit book. Because we know that on a Monday morning, they're going to post office to cash that benefit book. It was like a little checkbook. It used to come like, and we will give them or take them drugs up to £300 worth. Because we know on a Monday morning, we can meet them at the post office and give them back that book. They're going to cash it in, that benefit, and pay us. And then we take the book again and we start ticking them again. Nowadays, digital age, you wouldn't do that. They would just happily deposit that into a bank transfer, very easy. Also, with digital age, these smartphones, they can send a bulk text out. As soon as they leave London, Manchester, Liverpool, West Midlands, and go to a certain county location, do county lines, they will use that smartphone and send a bulk text message to all their clients, punters, addicts that they're in the area. You wouldn't do that 22 years ago. You would physically be giving your number out. You used to go to probation offices where you think you get clients, probation offices, job centers plus, and all those places to go and give out your number to get clients. But now they send one text, and they're also using Instagram to doing drugs. They even couriering it, they're posting it as well, being delivered like that through the courier. And I mean, through the pandemic, the last 2 years, they had to up their game. They were nicking NHS staff, lanyards and uniform and Amazon drivers, high vis and all this, just so they can blend in. They can have a reason. They're going to car parks, hospital car parks, supermarket car parks to even sell drugs. Because they know that's one place that Boris allowed everyone that they can go during the pandemic. You know, they always think outside the box, and we need to be ahead of them, ahead of that curve. So times have changed with digital age. And that's what gangs do. They're very clever. They find another way. They'll always find another way. But social media and digital age has really helped them. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And maybe another follow-up from me, if I can.
Sure.
You now work in Kent, but obviously spent your formative years in sort of Tottenham.
Yeah.
What's gangs and gang culture? How does that look in Kent today? And how alert do professionals need to be outside of traditional inner city areas where 20 years ago these issues were playing out and it wasn't so heard of elsewhere?
I'm not going to sit here for 1 minute and say Kent doesn't have gangs. Kent does have gangs, but it's not like London gangs. And the more issues we have in Kent is actually the London gangs coming into Kent, trying to recruit our Kent children. And it's the county lines. You know, as I'm speaking to you now, there's probably about, I don't know, between 47 to 57 county lines live in Kent right now. Kent police will take them down quickly. They'll pop up again. You know, and that's a battle we are dealing with in Kent at the moment. And then when these gangs from London, as everyone knows, London's the biggest export for county lines anyway. Once they get into Kent, because they're targeting our Kent children, then that exploitation starts. You know, and that's the fight here in Kent. So it's more London gangs, more than homegrown gangs in Kent, if that makes sense. Their presence is really felt here.
But I take it in Kent, there's vulnerability around young people as customers who have money and are spending that money on drugs. If I could just sort of shift it slightly, what's the vulnerability around sexual exploitation and sexual violence, both to boys and girls, at the end of the line? How's that playing out?
Some of the cases that I've been involved in with the police and that, what we've normally found is the police will arrest somebody doing county lines anywhere in Kent. They'll arrest them on the street, search them, they'll find a drug, they'll find a hotel key in their pocket. They'll track and trace that hotel key to a certain hotel. And then when they go into that hotel room, then they'll find girls in that hotel room, safekeeping the money and the drugs. So the male counterpart is on the streets doing all the dealing. And they'll go back to the hotel room to reload, if you like, get more drugs when they finish, and then put the money down and get more drugs. And sometimes this is when the child sexual exploitation happens. The girls, sometimes they're in there with so many male counterparts, and that sexual exploitation is occurring there. And a lot of the females that we find are actually sometimes not Kent females, Kent children who are females. They've traveled with them from London into that hotel. That's what we're finding at the moment. And that's some of the cases I've been exposed to.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for your great insights into this complex issue.